So I know I've been away for a month. Basically, stuff's been happening. I actually now have somewhat of a consistent schedule now, so maybe I'll be able to. I should be able to work in videos nearly every week, or at least nearly every 2 weeks. But we'll see. I'm still trying to figure out somewhat of my schedule. So I know I've been away for a month, but I have gotten my notebook out again, and as I've been getting into Doctor Who since like last 7, 8 months, particularly the classic series and some of the new stuff that's come out, I thought I would do top tens of my favourite Doctor Who stories of both the classic and the modern era, because I think they're very different, and if I did combine them together, this would be a very different list. So I'm going to keep them separate, and I think I might do this on a yearly basis. Maybe for the new series, I might do it yearly. Maybe for the classic era, maybe like 6 months, something like that, because obviously my collection's slowly growing, and this is a 2022 version of my favourite classic Doctor Who stories. I would like to give some honourable mentions because there's quite a few. Um, I think probably one that I'm currently going through is the War Games, Patrick Troughton's last story. It's been great so far, but I want to see how it ends. Macrotella, I also want to give a shout out. I want to give an honorable mention to Evil of the Daleks. What else as well as I look over? Revelation of the Daleks. Talons of Weng Chiang. I know that's a controversial take, but if you take the racism out of that story, it's actually a very, very good story. The Sea Devils, Battlefield, Revelation of the Daleks, the Moon Base. Basically, nearly everything in my collection I want to give an honorable mention to because the classic series is that good. Anyway, let's start off. These are in no particular order, by the way. So, my first pick is a very weird one. Is the Robots of Death. This is basically an Among Us game, more or less. Basically, the Doctor and Leela, they land in like a mining colony, and the basically the people on the well, it's not really a colony, it's more like a mining ship. They're slowly getting picked off one by one by their robot servants, and they need to figure out doing the who's manipulating the robots and controlling them, who's killing them all, essentially. So, like I say, it's basically a game of Among Us. This is like one of my first box sets that this came in, and this is the first one I put in because I didn't think it'd be that good, but I actually quite liked it, so that's why it's on this list. Because I was actually genuinely surprised with this, and I really enjoyed it. Next up, as I say, no in particular order, my favourite Doctor, Patrick Troughton, his first story to appear on this list is Tomb of the Cybermen. I was thinking about putting the Moonbase on here, but the Tomb of the Cybermen grabbed my attention just that little bit more. This is the first this is the first classic Cyberman story that I saw, and I gotta say, I heard a lot of things about it. It definitely lived up to my expectations. Maybe it's even surpassed them a little bit. It starts as kind of like a Tomb Raider story where obviously the Doctor. One of the things I like about Troughton's Doctor is like he just like bumbles into these situations that he gets himself into, and then obviously he flips a switch and he gets out of them, and he just you know people are just like, oh, who is this idiot? But then he turns out to save the day. That's one of the reasons why I like Troughton's Doctor so much, and also he's brilliantly funny in this uh story. I think probably the funniest scene is when Victoria and they're all about to go into the tomb along with the explorers that the Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria have latched onto in this story, and Jamie and Victoria both trying to hold Victoria's hand, and they're both ending up each holding each other's hands. They just like jolt to one side. It's very funny. Obviously with Cybermen, there's so many iconic imagery in in this story when it comes to not even classic Doctor Who, just Doctor Who, like Cybermen breaking out of the tombs, Troughton's speech to Victoria about family, which I think that's probably my favourite scene in this story. And it's just, this story lived up to my expectations, and as I say, surpassed them. So that's why it's on this list. Next up is a third Doctor story. Who is another one of my favourite Doctors, but Troughton's my favourite. Is Doctor Who and the Silurians. I don't know why it's got that title, but I really like this. I really like this story. I like that in the Sea Devils, which this story gets compared to a lot. The Sea Devils are all in one group, and they want to take control of the Earth. In this story, the Silurians, there's there's basically a divide in what the Silurians want. As some Silurians, they can live at peace with human beings and live in areas of the world where humans can't inhabit, but the Silurians can. Whereas other Silurians are just like, no, we were here first, therefore this is our planet, and we're going to kill you all with a deadly plague. And that's what I really like about this. What I like about this story is like the conflict between the Silurians and the human race as to who has this planet first. And obviously, well, Silurians did have it, but then obviously their astronomers saw an asteroid heading to the Earth, which was in fact the moon, because they thought it was going to hit the Earth, but no, it got caught in Earth's gravity and became a moon. And then research on a nuclear power plant, well, in this story at least, woke them up. And then they slowly start re-emerging, and obviously it starts with like a cat and mouse game trying to find this one Silurian, and then the Doctor finds their base, and then it's just a Doctor trying to play, peacekeeper and trying to find a diplomatic solution, which unfortunately ends up getting, well, at least this batch of Silurians all killed, essentially. Apart from a few, but we don't want to talk about that story yet, or at least not in this list. Anyway, moving on. Genesis of the Daleks, I think it has to one of the best stories of Doctor Who, in my opinion. I would say the title does live up to its name. It is the Genesis of the Daleks and how they're created, but it's not a Dalek story. It's a story about this guy Davros, the creator of the Daleks. So because obviously the Daleks, they were around in Doctor Who. They were in the second story, so essentially near the beginning of Doctor Who. And this is the first time we've seen their origins. And when you see Davos for the first time, you're just like, okay, that's where they came from. And then as the story progresses, you see Davros's like mentality and his beliefs, and you see where the Daleks come from through him, as he has such a warped ideology. Obviously, I did a video on Genesis of the Daleks for the most villainous scene as that project. So if you want to find out more about why I like the story so much, feel free to watch that. It's still up on my channel. This also shows like the Thal and the Khalid War, or near the end of it, and I think what this does great is just how emphasize how kind of, I know it's quite topical at the moment, how bad war is, and like there's no really heroes and there's no villains, because obviously throughout Doctor Who you've got the sense of the Thals are the good guys and the Khalids are the bad guys. But you see through this story, no, the Khalids do bad stuff, but the Thals as well have also done some terrible things. And again, Tom Baker, for this being in his first season, he's got an excellent performance, but he's outshone by Michael Wisher as Davros, and he's definitely the best part of this story. Obviously, the Daleks are in this, but they're not in it as much as you think you would, given the title. But that's fine, because this story, if you look at this as a Dalek story, you don't like it as much. If you see this as a Doctor Who story and as a story about Davros, you'll like it a lot more. And part of me does wish this would be the only story where Davros appears, but throughout classic Doctor Who, he's in every single Dalek story now, which isn't a bad thing, as Revelation of the Daleks, which was close to being on this list, does have Davros in it. But part of me does wish he was just a one-off villain for Genesis. But still, very, very good story. Or not much to say. Just as with all these stories, they're just very, very good. Moving on to my next pick is Seventh Doctor story, The Happiness Patrol. This is a political story, but it's a very good one. I know because modern Doctor Who can get political, but it's not near as enough done as The Happiness Patrol. I like the premise of this story. I like where it's set. It's basically, it's a planet where it's basically illegal to be any other emotion other than happy, which ironically doesn't make people very happy. I love the Seventh Doctor in this. He's like a chess master Doctor. He's all he's putting putting all the different chess pieces and all that so that he can basically win the fight. The Candyman. I know a lot of people look at this and it's like, it's that sweet mascot that we have here in the UK. Look how bad Doctor Who got in the 80s. I love the Candyman in this. He's brilliantly terrifying. He's like that goofy terrifying in a way. Obviously killing people for like sweets and all that. But I love the Candyman. I think he's brilliant. Helena is also another great villain in this. She's like the main villain, but I think the Candyman steals the show. I'm not too big of a fan on what's happening with Ace, even though I do love Ace as a companion. I don't like the stuff with this Ace as much in like other Seventh Doctor stories. And I think the sewer people in this are a little bit pointless as well. But apart from that, I love this story a lot. This is my Seventh Doctor story. I've watched it quite a few times, and I just absolutely love it. It's McCoy does a great performance. So does nearly everyone else in the story. And that's probably why it's it's quite a short story as well. It's only nearly an hour long. So if you want to get into Doctor Who, I do recommend this story a lot, as it's got quite a new series stuff as well. Anyway, next up, another third Doctor story, The Time Warrior. This does what I like Doctor Who. What I feel is what Doctor Who's really, really good at is putting stuff like different eras of time and putting them together. So in this case, you have weapons, in this case, like guns from like the 18th, 19th century, and being put in the Middle Ages. I think that's a great concept. I think it's dealt with very well. Obviously, because the people in the Middle Ages, the castle, people like Irongron and his men, they all see this as like wizardry and witchcraft and all that. Whereas, no, this is just, human beings' future weaponry in about 400 odd years' time. This is the first appearance of the Sontarans and Sarah Jane. I do like the Sontarans overall through Doctor Who, probably apart from Invasion of Time, that story, but I think I'll save that for another time. Lynx, he's a brilliant villain in this. So is Irongron. I really like Irongron in this story. Third Doctor, John Pertwee, fantastic in this. And so is Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane. Obviously, this is her first story. And you get a really good sense for her character, of her being a journalist and her not really believing this at first as she's stowaway in the TARDIS when the Doctor goes back in time to find all these scientists that are helping Lynx's ship that he's taken from the 21st century and put him in the Middle Ages. Again, going back to me liking how Doctor Who does taking an era of history and putting it into another, which is why I'm really liking the war games at the moment. And I think probably when I do this next time, that will appear on the list. But anyway, Time Warrior, I just love it. It's a fantastic story, and also, probably one of my favourite costumes for the Doctor in this as well. The green, the third Doctor is just got an amazing sense of fashion. I think that's all it needs to be said for the third Doctor and his fashion. And this story, fucking brilliant. Moving on to, I think it's probably like my most recent story that I've watched all the way through, appearing on this list. Enemy of the World, found a few years ago in Nigeria. I really like this story a lot. The reason, Patrick Troughton gives two brilliant performances as not only the Doctor, but as the villain Salamander. So you see him on screen with himself. And he does I think he's better playing in this role. He's better playing Salamander than he is a Doctor in this because um, obviously like the Salamander is basically second Doctor's lookalike more or less. Um, it's a great story. This is basically a James Bond Doctor Who story, and I haven't watched a whole lot of James Bond, but you really get a sense of that in the story, and I don't. It's just a great solid story. Also, how the hell do they make England look like um Australia? Also, fun fact: this story set in 2018, so unfortunately, this actually didn't happen uh, in real life, which is a shame because that'd be pretty funny if it did. Although that's a bit of a stretch. And I don't have really much more to say about this story. It's got a great performance by Troughton as both the Doctor and Salamander. I don't really think there's much more needs to be said. Troughton just carries the story because I do wish Jamie and Victoria had a bit more to do in this story. They do, but not as much. And they're kind of outshone by some of the side characters. But overall, I Salamander tricking all that group of people that he's hidden underground, I think that's brilliant and does get his comeuppance in the end of the story as well. So, yeah, Enemy of the World, solid story. Now, moving on to the only First Doctor story I have on my list, which is his last, The 10th Planet. First introduction of the Cybermen, and it's a bloody good introduction to one of the most iconic villains of Doctor Who. I think the black and white of this story actually helps it quite a lot. Because I think if this was in colour, the Cybermen would look very, very cheap and very, very crap. But I think in this story, you get the horror element of these Cybermen because these are like pretty much the first generation of Cybermen. So you can see they've got the human hand. You can see the humanity, which I think is what's lost in the newer series of Doctor Who with the Cybermen, is that they don't look human enough. It's that uncanny valley sort of thing with these Cybermen, and them taking over the Arctic base, and then bringing Mondas into Earth, into the solar system, which is Earth's twin. It's just all around a great story. I love Hartnell's speech of like emotions and like that whole scene with Polly arguing with the lead Cyberman about like how emotions are important and all that stuff. And he's like, emotions, hate, pride, fear. Have you no emotions, sir? I do like that. That's one of my favorite lines of Hartnell's Doctor. It's a shame he's not in it all that much. I think, especially in the near towards the end of the story because of Hartnell's ill health at the time. Unfortunately, the last episode of this is animated, but we do have the regeneration scene thanks to Blue Peter. Although the animation is brilliant, it's very anime-esque, but I think it works very, very well, and it's solid animation for the last story, or the last episode of this story, and a great way to send off the First Doctor. And speaking of the regeneration, as we move on to my second to last story, Power of the Daleks, Troughton's first story. I fucking love this story so much. It is animated, which I might put a few people off, but the special edition, which is one I have, is the better version as they animated it in 2016 with pretty much half the time and half the budget, and therefore didn't really come out the best. So they did this as like a passion project. But this story is brilliant. Troughton's first performance, amazing. The story, amazing. Basically, the premise of this is that the Doctor, Ben, and Polly, they land on the planet Vulcan, which is going through, and the colony on there is going through a power struggle enough, and the Daleks essentially take advantage of that, and they basically revitalize their race. Again, there's quite a lot of iconic imagery in this story. Obviously, with the Daleks, I think the way this story works so well is that okay, we have this new Doctor, which obviously the audience aren't going to be familiar with. So let's take a villain that we are familiar with in the Daleks, and I think that works so well. This story had to work because otherwise we wouldn't have Doctor Who like it is today, or we wouldn't, or it might have ended back in the 1960s if they didn't get the story so right. The Daleks, they got very right. David Whittaker, obviously because he did Evil of the Daleks as well, he is probably the best Dalek writer. I'd say maybe up there with Terry Nation, but David Whittaker, he's my favorite Dalek writer. He gets them so right. With Daleks in this, obviously they're scheming behind the scenes and they play it off so well. Obviously with the scene with Troughton, the Doctor knows how bad these Daleks are, but the colony's just like, but he's asking us to be our servant, constantly saying that over the Doctor, who knows what these are like. And obviously that comes then to bite the colony at the backside near the end of the story, with all the, like, they're making all these Daleks, and that scene where they're just constantly coming off the conveyor belt is great, with the descent of Lesterson going from like this, this very exciting scientist to just basically going insane by the end of his story as well. It's a great character arc for him. And the Doctor, Troughton and Miss, I would love if this story was live action instead of the animation, and if this was Spawned, probably would be my favorite Doctor Who story of all time because the animation's so good. I think this would be my best if we had it in if we had it in the archives. Aside from a few, obviously we have a few scenes in the archives, but no episodes, no nothing. And maybe the mystery behind this story as well is probably why it's so up high as well. In my, like, this would probably be my favorite Doctor Who story. Apart from one, I've gone about this story enough. Power of the Daleks, it's fucking brilliant. I can't stress it enough, even if it's animated and it's in black and white, because they just decided to do it that way. And also, when they did it in color in 2016, it was shit. So this story slaps. Go pick it up, or go find it on me, or go, just pick it up. It's brilliant. Now moving on to, this is definitely my favourite Doctor Who story of all time, at least for a moment. Caves Androzani. Ironically, I've got two Doctor Who. I've just slapped in a Doctor's first story with a Doctor's last story. Caves is brilliant. It's just brilliant. Obviously, the main premise of this story is that the Fifth Doctor, Peter Davison, and Perry, they basically land on a planet at the wrong place, wrong time for them, essentially, and they've got to get out of it. What I like about Peter Davison's portrayal of the Doctor is that he's very heroic, and it's emphasized so much in this story, where he's saving a companion that he pretty much barely knows. I think either the Doctor and Perry had like one story before Caves, so he's basically he's saving a companion that he barely knows. And I think maybe this comes to the down fact that he was unable to save Adric earlier on in the Fifth Doctor's run, is that he was unable to save Adric in the end of Earthshock. The villains in this are brilliant. Showers Jack, he's so creepy and pervy towards Perry, and he's a great villain. But at the same time, you empathise with his situation when you hear his backstory. You can't help but sympathise with his situation. Cliffhangers in this story are brilliant, aside from the Armadillo Dragon one, which is a little bit that Armadillo Dragon creature in the caves. Apart from that one, because part one, where the Doctor and Perry about to execute it, and you're just like, how are they getting out of this one? And then episode 3's cliffhanger is so close, but I think episode 1 is so much better than episode 3's, but not by a lot. Cliffhangers are brilliant. All performances are brilliant. Davison gives his best performance probably up there with Earthshock. And yeah, I've got no much more to say about Caves. It's just an amazing Doctor Who story. And for a send-off, probably my favourite, well, it is my favourite regeneration story for a Doctor, as a heroic performance by the Doctor, Great performance by Peter Davison. I know I've repeated myself a lot, but it just goes to show how much this story is fucking brilliant. So, that is my list and my return after a month's hiatus, more or less. So, hope you enjoyed this video. If you stayed to the end, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Feel free to give it a like if you agreed, or at least enjoyed this video. Leave it down in the comments if you give me your lists, because I like to see how different it is. And I know that opinions are worse than graphic nudity and violence on the internet, so I welcome your opinions with open arms, no matter how divisive they are. So, yeah, you like this video, feel free. And if you like this video, check out my other content on my channel. And if you like my other content, turn that subscribe button to grey or whatever colour it is nowadays. And if you want to dislike it, that's fine as well, because I have to go out of my way to see the dislikes anyway. But with that, guys, I'm back, and I shall see you in the next video. Goodbye.